Okay, I think we are ready to start the next part. That is Dhamma talk based on concept and reality book compiled by Most Venerable Katukurunde ஞானானந்த Thero. I think someone is ready to read the book,
Yeah, but
and I think maybe someone we can start from where we have stopped.
yeah, Bhante, we stopped at this this paragraph here, so I can start from the start of the page, starting this
Yeah,
way.
okay. Yeah.
Avasara Bhante, this world Kachayana usually bases its views on two things, on existence and non-existence. Now, he who with right insight sees the arising of the world as it really is, does not hold with the non-existence of the world. And he who with right insight sees the passing away of the world as it really is, does not hold with the existence of the world. The world, for the most part, is given to approaching, grasping, entering into, and getting entangled as regards views. Whoever does not approach, grasp, and take his stand upon that proclivity towards clinging, approaching, and grasping, that mental standpoint, namely the thought, "This is my soul," he knows that what arises is just ill, and what ceases is just ill. Thus he is not in doubt. He is not perplexed, and herein he has knowledge that he is not merely another's. Thus far, Kachayana, he has right view. Everything exists. This is one extreme. Nothing exists. This is the other extreme. Not approaching either of these extremes, the Tathagata teaches the doctrine by the middle way. Conditioned by ignorance, preparations come to pass. In conceptual terms, this middle path would mean that there is an arising, upada, a passing away, vaya, and an otherwiseness in persistence, tittassa anattassa, of phenomena. It might even be summed up in paradoxical terms as a series of intermittent arisings and passing away, with nothing that arises and passes away, with nothing that arises and passes away, a flux of becoming, bhavasota. But this is as far as concepts go, and the rest has to be accomplished through intuitive wisdom. The primary significance of the formula of dependent arising lies here. List of phenomena, both mental and material, are linked together with the term paccaya, or any of its equivalents, and the fact of their conditionality and non-substantiality is emphasized with the help of analysis and synthesis. Apart from serving the immediate purpose of their specific application, these formulas help us to attune our minds in order to gain panya. Neither the words in these formulas nor the formulas as such are to be regarded as ultimate categories. We have to look not so much at them as through them. We must not miss the wood for the trees by dogmatically clinging to the words in the formulas as being ultimate categories. As concepts, they are merely the modes in which the flux of material and mental life has been arrested and split up in the realm of ideation, as for instance in the case of milk, curd, butter, and ghee. From the wordling's point of view, they are infested with the problems of identity and difference, which tend to resolve themselves into extreme notions of absolute existence and non-existence. The main purpose of the formula of dependent arising is to blaze the middle path of conditionality as summed up in the abstract principle. Imasmin sati idam hoti, imassu pada idam upajjati. Imasmin asati idam nahoti, imassa niroda idam nirujjati. When this is, this comes to be, with the arising of this arises. When this is not, this does not come to be, with the stopping of this is stopped.
Okay,
All the forms.
yeah, one moment, Saman. So if you go back to the previous passage, now there are a few interesting points actually Venerable Jnananda Thero has highlighted here. So one thing is about this simile that is given here about this milk, curd, butter and ghee. Probably you are familiar with how the traditional agricultural society, so they are maintaining cattle and then actually they are gaining the milk from the cows and then they are taking it through a series of various processes. At one stage, we are talking it as milk. At another stage, we call it as curd. At another stage, we are calling it as butter. And at another stage, we are calling it as ghee. So this is the whole type of thing that we need to carefully look at. So basically, if someone argues, okay, so is the ghee available inside milk? Or if someone is arguing, is butter available inside milk? So we can't give a kind of a reasonable answer. What we can say is, currently assume now we only drawn milk from the cow. So now what we have is merely milk. But after a while, maybe after a couple of days, it can convert into curd. And again after several days, probably it can convert it to butter. And again after a few days, it can probably convert into ghee. But right now, what we have may be milk. So likewise, so the point highlighted here by the Buddha in actually this simile is given in the Pottapada Sutta. So once we are in the present moment, what happened to us is that we are trying to connect with the past points and the future points and trying to comprehend as a kind of a false existence. Currently, what we are going through is only the present moment, but we think that we had the past, we had the various past events, and again we extend it to the future and we think, okay, I will exist in the future. So I am feeling kind of a existence. It's a kind of a wrong notion of existence. So basically, assume now we have curd. Now, curd is the only thing now we have. We can't say now we have the milk or now we have the, say, butter. Currently what we have may be simply the curd. So likewise, so anyway, the language being used to give a kind of an understanding or have a kind of a feeling, okay, there was something and there is something right now and there will be something in the future. So this is how we prepare our language so that we can communicate, so that I exist in the past, currently also I am existing, and future also I am going to exist. So likewise, based on the chronological order, we are trying to impose some sort of existence. So then one can say, okay, I existed, or I am existing, okay, or I am going to exist. So likewise, the personality being highlighted based on this kind of a communication, this kind of a vocabulary, or this kind of grammar. And but anyway, actually what is happening is only in the present moment. Now, in the previous passage, actually, this is somewhat fairly highlighted in the Kacchanagotta Sutta. That is what Katakunda Thero has taken here. In the Kacchanagotta Sutta, Buddha basically say, Sabbang attitiko kacchanayan eko anto, sabbang attitiyan dutiyo anto. Everything exists is one kind of an extreme. Everything does not exist is the other extreme. So one can say, okay, everything exists, everything is there. Currently, everything is there. Past, everything was there. Future also, everything will be there. So kind of a continuity of existence. Typically, we can say it like a sasatavada, kind of a eternal existence. Or else someone can say, okay, there is nothing existing. So kind of a nihilism. So these are the two extremes. But the point is actually Buddha, without taking these two extremes, so he's trying to give us a teaching based on the middle, without taking any of the extremes. So his middle path is basically based on the Parisamppada, basically based on the dependent arising. Imasmin sati idang hoti, imas suppada idang uppajjati. Imasmin asati idang na hoti, imas nirodha idang nirujjati. So basically highlights, if this exists, this comes to be, and with the arising of this also arising. If this does not exist, that also can't exist, and with the passing away of this also passes away. So basically, one is entirely dependent on another. So nothing is completely independent. So everything, whatever the condition, is every time dependent on something. So nothing is completely independent. One or anything can't exist by itself. Everything is somewhat dependent. So the kind of a dependent coexistence is what actually how things are happening. So this is the kind of a deep teaching that Buddha explains to us, telling, so without being or without having a person, without having a soul, without having a self, how the things would continue. So the secret is given here in the Parisamppada. So there are conditions. So due to those conditions, there's another condition comes to be. With the arising of one condition, the other condition also arising. If this condition is not continuously provided, then the dependent condition also can't continue. It also would collapse. So things are interdependent. So one conditions the other. So the example is the typical formula that we are quite familiar with. Avijja pacca sankhara, sankhara pacca vijnanam, vijnana pacca namrupa, namrupa pacca salayatanam. So likewise, so these are actually the examples to this conditionality. These are actually the examples to this particular formula. So if we apply this formula to avijja and sankhara, so one can say when avijja exists, sankharas can exist. With the arising of avijja, sankhara would arise. And if there is no avijja, if there is no ignorance, then sankharas can't exist. And with the cessation of avijja or with the cessation of ignorance, the sankharas are also going to cease. So basically, likewise, you can apply this principle to all the links. And interestingly, Katukunda Thero highlights here, so those links, that means avijja, sankhara, then vijnana, namarupa, salayatana. Now these are actually certain points of this continuous process. So very beautifully he has mentioned in the next passage. If you go to the next page, Saman. So there he points out, neither the words in these formulas nor the formulas as such are to be regarded as ultimate categories. Because there is a tendency, okay, what is avijja? Okay, what is sankhara? What is, say, vijnana? What is namarupa? What is salayatana? So we are always trying to ask a clear-cut definition, expecting a very precise answer. Otherwise, I am not going to accept it. So this is how our mind tends to accept a thing. So one has to give a very clear-cut, very precise answer. Okay, these are the demarcations. This is what exactly meant by avijja. This is what exactly meant by sankhara. This is what exactly meant by consciousness. What is exactly meant by namarupa. So likewise, we are having a kind of a tendency to go after or look after for very precise definition, a clear-cut demarcation. But Katukunda Thero is pointing out, so these are actually certain, say, chronological or kind of a very temporary marks, certain characteristics, helping us to understand this continuous flow. So whenever our mind is going through kind of an ignorance state, so it will quickly go through this whole cycle, a kind of a chain reaction, quickly jump into the next and next and next, and ultimately end up with some sort of a suffering. So basically, once we got the milk from the cow, so we can't say to stop as milk. It will continue to draw towards the curd. And curd also will not last forever. I mean, it will draw towards the butter. And it will then draw towards the ghee. So likewise, it's a kind of a dynamic process actually. So this dynamic process is something always changing. So we can't stop it. It's subjected to this arising and passing away, or it's subjected to continuous change. We can't stop it. So that's the inherent characteristics is the impermanence. So because of this impermanence, we can define this Patissamuppada in a way. So if one can thoroughly understand the characteristics of impermanence, anicca, that means he is slowly understanding the Patissamuppada. So we can say there's a possibility to define Patissamuppada because everything is changing. Everything is under a kind of a flux. Everything is subjected to some sort of an impermanence, kind of a transience. So in this transient process, so we are trying to explain, okay, this is the ignorance link, this is the sankhara link, this is the consciousness link, this is the nama rupa link. So this is for our own understanding. So Buddha has made us somewhat clear, somewhat simple, so that we can understand how things are happening. Because otherwise it's like a puzzle, like a riddle we can't understand. So what Buddha has done seems to me very much like he has properly understood the whole thing and then explained us, okay, here you look at, here is how the ignorance is conditioning the process by producing sankhara and how it's gathering momentum and allowing the consciousness to establish based on the name and form, and how it is gathering the moment to build up into the six sense bases, and it will end up with various different kinds of contacts, and then contacts causes feelings, and then feelings are very much like attracted, or we crave for that such feelings, and this craving as builds up, then we end up with grasping, and we get into a new type of a state, completely new mental state, kind of a birth happens to a new state, and now we are born to entirely a new process, new state, but that also going to collapse. Because new state also is not a permanent state, that's also subjected to some sort of a changing, and ultimately we end up with suffering. So likewise, this explanation given by Katugun Thero is really radical in a way. So giving emphasis to the Parissamuppada in a way explained in the this Kacchanugatta Sutta. So the Kacchanugatta Sutta, the interesting part is that Buddha is telling, okay, what exists is one extreme. Telling that nothing exists is the other extreme. So one can say, okay, when ignorance is there, there's a possibility to arise some sort of an ignorant process. So as a result of ending up with a personality, saying, okay, I am here, I am talking, I am thinking, I am working, because the I, the whole existence of I happens because of the ignorance. When ignorance is there, there's a potential, there's a possibility for this I to happen, the personality view to happen, a personal to exist. But when there is no ignorance, this whole process collapses, and you can't say then there is I, there is a person, because that conditioning causes, reasons are not there, they are absent. So likewise, this whole process, how the existence is happening, how the personality is happening, how the I-making happening, or mind-making happens, so all that suffering happens, particularly in the mental domain. So it is being explained using this Parissamuppada. And again, as he has mentioned here, so So if one is having this kind of an understanding, so he would say, okay, whatever arising is just mere suffering. Whatever arising is some sort of an ill. What is passing away is also which is already arisen, that is a suffering. So what is passing away is also suffering. What is passing away is also ill. There is no person, there is no soul, there is no self, which is arising or passing away. What is arising is mere suffering. What is passing away is also mere suffering. Dukkhameva uppajjamanang uppajjati, dukkham nirujjamanang nirujjati. So this is a very popular statement made by the Buddha. Dukkhameva uppajjamanang uppajjati, dukkham nirujjamanang nirujjati. So what is arising is a mere suffering, unsatisfactoriness, and what is passing away is also a mere unsatisfactoriness, a mere suffering. Other than that, there is no any person, there is no any other soul or self continuously existing or going to get the birth and die, something like that. But what is arising is merely the suffering. What is passing away is merely the suffering. This is a very popular statement, not actually certain other arahants are also referred and telling, now probably you can remember in the Vajra Sutta, where when Bhikkhuni Vajira, Arahant Bhikkhuni Vajira confronted Mara, so she beautifully sort of conveyed the message to Mara, even though you are trying to convince me that there is a person here, but I know that how the personality is arising because of the ignorance. So ignorance is conditioning this whole sankharas, whole formations in the mind, ultimately allowing the consciousness to establish and feeling or giving a wrong notion of a personality, giving a wrong notion of an existence, giving a wrong notion of I, sense of I. But when there is no ignorance, so that process being hindered or that process being challenged, so that there is no arising of a person, there is no person, no arising of an I, but their collaboration is there. So the world can continue, but that continuation is actually a kind of a flux. So that's why basically sabbang attiti ko ayam kachana eko antu. So everything exists is one extreme, everything does not exist is the other extreme. So how one can overcome these two extremes? So when I am telling you, probably you can little bit understand, but that is not enough. Actually, how are we going to personally, or how are we going to kind of by ourselves going to experience it? So this is the whole purpose of Vipassana, for us to really experience it, really understand it, comprehend it. Say, for example, you are developing Vedananupassana. Various different feelings are now arising. You have already developed fair amount of mindfulness, you have already developed fair amount of concentration, and you know how to balance the effort. Assume now that developed mindful, concentrated mind, now you are keeping on to the feeling. Probably you can recognize how quickly feelings are arising. So feelings are arising. So you can see the arising side. So when you see the arising side, you can't deny telling, okay, nothing exists is kind of irrelevant. And nothing exists is something you can't accept, because you can see that things are arising, feelings are arising. So you can't deny telling, okay, feelings are not there, because you can see that feelings are arising. But on the other hand, once they arise, they don't last for a long time. They are quite momentary. They are very much like very transient. You can still see how they quickly pass away. So feelings are passing away. It is common to all the different kinds of feelings. It may be a pleasurable feeling, it may be an equanimous feeling, it may be a painful feeling. Whatever the type of feeling, they are passing away also. So when things are passing away, once you thoroughly see that, the passing away side, so how can you say that there is feelings existing? Because there is no such continued existence for feelings. What is there is a very momentary passing away is there. So all the feelings, whatever arising, is subject to passing away. You can't stop them. You can't keep them forever. And things are beyond your control even. So very much like you see the rising side, then you can't stand on the everything does not exist. And when you see the passing away side, then you can't stand on the continuous existence. What you can accept ultimately is that kind of a flux. Things are quickly arising and passing away, quickly arising and passing away. Other than that, there is no any continuous existence as such. There is no anything as kind of an entity, as some sort of a soul, a self, an entity going to exist. Rather, a kind of a flux is there, which is continuously arising and passing away, arising and passing away. So once one see this quick arising and passing away, how can he stand either on the continuous existence side or the complete denial of continuous non-existence? So then you can't stand on any of these the extremes. Everything exists is also you can't accept. Everything does not exist also you can't accept. So this is how basically while one is engaged in the vipassana, so slowly one would realize, okay, the momentum is there, the continuity is there, not as a kind of a soul, not as a superior God, but because of this conditioned processing. So things are existing because of the supporting conditions are there. Till the ignorance is there, the mind continue to fabricate. So for example, you can observe your mind, probably you can understand, okay, when there is no ignorance, instead if there is some sort of a wisdom, then the mind stops fabrications. Mind like to be quiet. Mind like to enjoy the kind of a silence rather than doing any kind of a fabrication. But on the other hand, when there is ignorance, so mind continue to fabricate. Mind continue to dream. Mind continue to fantasize. Because ignorance is there. You create a person out of ignorance. You create an I out of ignorance. So now this I, existing I, tends to dream, tends to imagine, tends to forecast, tends to fabricate, tends to regret about the past. Now, always there is something to be kind of worried for this I, when the I is there. But on the other hand, when mind is enriched or developed or strengthened with the wisdom, so that wisdom is responsible for calming down the fabrications. It basically reduces fabrications. Because it understood the reality that nothing exists is also one extreme. Everything does not exist also another extreme. So what is available is very much like an arising and passing away process. It's like a flux. You can't find a soul at any place. You can't find a eternal self at any place. You can't find a kind of a permanency at any place. Everything is utterly transient. So when someone is having this sort of an understanding, so his mind can't stand on any substance in a way. So that's why one sometimes say, so when you see the impermanence thoroughly, it can't capture the signs. It can't capture the objects. It can't capture the persons or labels or anything, because things are utterly transient, quickly arising and passing away, quickly arising and passing away, without leaving enough time for you to recognize, enough time for you to take signs or characteristics or marks. So now the sign less going to happen, so mind become unable to extract signs. So ultimately what happens, all the traps being hindered, all the bondages being cut off, so the mind become freed. So that freed mind, we can say, kind of a wise mind. It has temporarily cut off the ignorance. Then the mind stops and you feel that kind of alienation, that the Previously there was I, previously there was an existence. I felt the presence of myself, but now you can't feel the presence of yourself. Everything like collapsed. Previously I felt my existence. I am a very important person, and I felt my presence. But now, as one continues one's vipassana, there may be instances that the breeding of I, or the fabrication of I, the generation of I, all are very much like suddenly stopped. So you feel frightened even. You may question what's happened. So where is I? I feel frightened. It also can happen. So as one continues, probably this frightening may reduce, and he start accepting the whole thing. He understand what has really happened. So how without a self, without a person, how the continuity is still possible because of the conditioned processes. So when one is able to understand this dependent origination particularly, then he simply adjusts himself to the situation. He accepts the situation. He can easily understand the situation rather than thinking that, okay, I am going to die or I am going to destroy. Rather, the I is also a conditioned phenomena. The presence of I, the sense of I, the creation of I is also a kind of a product of ignorance, a product of grasping. So therefore, we can look at it in a more deep sense, particularly in the Vipassana point of view, how this Pacchanugatta is a very important sutta. Even though it is so short, it is very, very important sutta. And I heard that Nagarjuna, in his excellent work of the Mula Madhyama Karika, he particularly has referred this sutta. So this is one of the interesting suttas which are explaining the supramundane side of the Sammaditthi. So they are ultimately Buddha confirmed to Venerable Kaccayana, telling, okay, if someone is having this kind of an understanding, he does not take any sides. He does not take into standing with any of the extremes. Rather, he understands this whole conditioned process. With the arising, when this exists, that's also going to exist, and with the arising of this also is arising, and when this does not exist, this also does not exist. With the passing away of this also passes away. So this is the whole principle of the Patissamuppada, sometimes called as the Idappaccheta, the principle. So this is the most important part. And if we are able to understand this whole thing through our vipassana, through our practice, then very much like everything has become very clear to us. So we know how the process is happening, how the different artifacts are contributing, and even though there is no person, how still the continuity can happen, how the karma can generate based on the ignorance and the craving. So all that are very much become somewhat clear to the yogi, to the practitioner, when he is thoroughly familiar with these principles, thoroughly understand these key teachings, and he himself is practicing and understanding various links, how they are now being somewhat faded away. And these links are not kind of permanent links. So in one's mind, one can recognize, okay, these certain links are now not operating. They are very much like faded away because the wisdom is there. So once the wisdom is there, the ignorance is cut off and the consciousness can't establish, and there is no name and form. The mind becomes very clear and clean. So there are no any illusions in the mind. There are no any visualizations in the mind. Mind become completely unestablished or anidassana. And on such case, the six sense bases are not being influenced by the name and form. And one can sit quietly without any fabrication, without any prapancha, without any proliferations. So mind become utterly silent. One can enjoy that inner silence. Okay, these are very interesting areas for one to understand, particularly when one is practicing vipassana. Okay, I feel that is enough for today's Dhamma sermon. Now, if you have any question, now you can participate in the Dhamma discussion.
Saramante, we have 7 questions today.
Right.
Question number 1 of 7 is a general question. Dear Bante, we have heard that it is beneficial if one can contemplate the observations as a collection of 5 aggregates. Is it possible to apply this to seeing, hearing and smelling, etc.? But my question is, how do you apply this effortlessly to mind-made thoughts when thoughts come and go? Much merits for your teachings with metta. That's the end of the question.
No, actually, the practice slowly has to become effortless. So we can't say it is from the beginning it is effortless. So at times you may have to arouse wisdom, you have to emphasize the mind, remind the mind, purposely drive your mind into a proper track because it has now shifted to a wrong track. It's going in an ignorant path. So you have noticed that since you are mindful, but now you have to put yourself into the correct track. So likewise, we can't say from the beginning that it is effortless. At the beginning, definitely it is effortful. So only when you are effortful, you can continue the practice. But as a result of that practice, you may reach to a stage, okay, now mind is very much like calm and quiet. There is no grasping, there is no any inner tension or stress. So probably very much like you have now reached the kind of refuge, Tadanga Nibbudi, quenched to that extent, quenched to that amount of wisdom. So once you are there, now you need to change your approach, your methodology to a more effortless way. Rather than now struggling yourself, now recognize, okay, now things are somewhat all right. There is no person, there is no any self-view. So right now things are happening smoothly. Okay, let me settle here. Let me accept this as a temporary nibbana. And let me see how, again, because of my past ignorance or the latent tendencies, how again mind tends to grasp. How again mind go and tangle with things. So this is how the process will be continued. So at the beginning we can say we have to have a fair amount of effort, but later then you shift it to an effortless path. And sometimes from today's terms one can say, okay, first you are doing it, but now you are transferring yourself to mere being. Not much into doing, but rather into mere being.
Question number 2 of 8. This is on mindful sitting. Dear Venerable Sir, my sitting practice is mindfulness on breathing. Today I could establish mindfulness within 5 minutes and continue with the practice. But these days I observe a lot of distractions to many thoughts. I recall Venerable talking about the 5 hindrances. Can I understand this continuous distraction as restlessness of the mind or Uddacha Kukucha? Appreciate if Venerable Sir can recall the hindrances and how we can observe them subside during the practice. With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, actually, either in the Vipassana or in Samatha, so one stage is actually to overcome these hindrances. So with hindrances, actually, you can't continue. So that's why we are trying to develop a kind of a practice, a methodology to overcome these hindrances, to suppress for the time being, to calm down these hindrances. So one area actually what I can explain is the jhana factors or the samadhi factors. Say the vitakka. Again and again you are applying your mind to a particular phenomena. So you have to do it very quickly and you have to be in full alert in order to do that because this phenomena is happening continuously. Say for example, rising and falling. So as you apply your mind onto rising, the falling is kind of continued. And once you apply your mind to falling, then the rising is there. The rising continues. So likewise, it's a kind of a continuity is there. So that's why the rising and falling or breathing, or walking. Now these are kind of continuous processes. So it is quite easy for us to apply our mind quickly to the next event, to the next moment. So that avoids we being lethargic. That avoid the mind being lethargic, so that sloth and torpor is abandoned because of this very quick application of your mind. Vitakka is there. And as you carefully observe the phenomena and examine the phenomena, so that avoids any kind of a doubt. Say while you are walking, you can understand, okay, this is left leg. I have not missed them. I haven't messed them up. So everything's very clear. This is the left leg. Okay, this is exactly what I am experiencing. So likewise, you are quite sure about things. That basically avoids any kind of a doubt. You are not in a kind of a perplexed state. Rather, your mind is very clear. You are quite sure. So that perplexity, the doubt is abandoned because of this examination, the vichara part. And then piti. When you are happy, then as you continue the practice, either in the samatha or vipassana, so the mind becomes happy. There are states that, okay, you are somewhat internally happy, not because that you eat something or drink something to be happy. So without coming from any kind of a typical sense entertainment, still your mind is happy because of the practice. So when that happiness is there, so the ill will cannot find its footing. So ill will can't stay with the happiness. They are quite opposite. So when happiness or the rupture is there, then the ill will is abandoned. And then what we call as the sukha, the happiness, that the kind of a very comfortable bodily and mental existence, basically helps the mind to stay quiet, stay with it, rather than going after various other things. Now the mind understood, okay, internally there is happiness. At home there is happiness. Now I don't need to go in search of happiness, because internally at home there is a happiness. So stay at home then. So the restlessness is abandoned because mind finds happiness within. So this is a very interesting scenario. So why our mind become restless? Because it is in search of some sort of a happiness. It's trying to be happy by going outside, or trying to look back some interesting incidents happen in the past, or some imagined states going to happen in the future. So this is how the mind is operating. But now what happened currently at the present moment, internally there is happiness. There is a kind of a satisfaction. There is a kind of fulfillment. So then why worry? Why am I going to suffer? Because there is no need to be suffering, because currently I am happy. So likewise, the restlessness and worry is cut off when this inner happiness, inner joy is there. And ultimately, ekaggata, the one-pointedness of the mind, the samadhi, actually helps to cut off the kamachanda. So the kamachanda, the sensual desire, the characteristics of sensual desire, to jump from one object to the other object, not being able to satisfy with what is available. So that is the characteristics of the kamachanda. But when your mind starts restraining itself and behaving at a particular state and not wanting to shift to any other thing, just able to continue to watch breathing for, say, 100 cycles, 100 breaths, say 200 breaths continuously, that means mind has concentrated. Mind doesn't want to jump, and mind has left that old cycle. Now it can stay quietly, happily concentrated onto a particular phenomena for a long time. That means it will cut off the kamachanda. So likewise, the development of these jhana factors, or we can say samadhi factors, either in the samatha or vipassana, in both cases, are very much helpful to abandon the hindrances. And it is actually a must, or we can say the one stage of our practice to abandon these hindrances.
Question number 3 of 8. This is a Dhammasaman question. Dear Bhante, how do we connect cessation of conceptual proliferation and release of the mind to realizing Dhamma based on the Four Noble Truths? Our common understanding is that the realization of Dhamma, we must contemplate and follow the path based on Yoniso Manasikara. Thank you for your explanation. With metta. That's the end of the question.
Yeah, actually the conceptual proliferation is a product of ayoniso manasikara. If we had yoniso manasikara, then the prapancha can't happen. The prapancha is a product of ayoniso manasikara. Ultimately end up with suffering. So if we are trying to apply the Four Noble Truths into the situation, now in case your mind is with prapancha, going through some sort of an obsession, it's a kind of a suffering state. Now you are in a kind of a frustration. You are in a kind of an agitation. You are with some sort of a mental suffering. No, this is the suffering. So you need to accept, you need to recognize, okay, there is suffering. So the Four Noble Truths, the first Noble Truth is the truth of suffering. So you need to admit, okay, there is suffering. It is not that I am suffering, rather there is suffering. And then you need to find out the cause. So what is the cause? Cause may be I am supporting this proliferation. I am continue to proliferate. I am continue to obsess the mind, continue to regret, continue to worry. So all that is coming because of the continuity of this prapancha. So you understand the cause. So there is prapancha maybe because of the tanha or mana or ditti. So these are the typical roots that usually mentioned. So these are the particular reasons for this prapancha to happen. Suppose you understood the tanha as the cause of this prapancha, then what is the cessation? Okay, you need to abandon the tanha. So don't like this conceptual proliferation. So you need to abandon that conceptual proliferation. Don't support that conceptual proliferation. Don't support prapancha. Now, in order to avoid prapancha or to stop prapancha, you need to practice sila samadhi panya. So either you have to put your attention back to the body and behave yourself, calm down yourself, practice anapanasati, very much like calm down your proliferation, obsession, thinking, all that, and relax yourself, calm down. Okay, this is the practice of sila samadhi panya. So likewise, so many methods are available to abandon the prapancha. So that all comes under the fourth noble truth, the noble eightfold path. The sila samadhi panya, all three categories are actually Buddha recommend to overcome prapancha. Say you need to properly behave yourself, you should have certain amount of sense restraint, and you should not associate bad people, and all different kinds of behavioral type of ethical part is there to overcome the prapancha. And then you need to practice samadhi, the samatha, in order to calm down the mind, to reduce the hindrances. That also helps to calm down this prapancha, to cut off the prapancha. And then the wisdom part, and so you recognize how the prapancha being developed, how eye-making happens, how mind-making happens, how the personality view being developed. So all that is actually helping you to understand the very, very tricky parts of this cycle, very subtle parts, subtle contributions to this cycle, and slowly, if you are able to cut them off, to abandon them, then mind becomes slowly silent, calm, relaxed, quiet, no prapancha. So basically the Sila Samadhi Prajna as the fourth noble truth is basically recommended for overcoming prapancha.
Question number 5 of 8. This is a general question. Dear Bhante, last time Bhante mentioned that self-view is created by 20 methods. How can we practically isolate and know about formations and consciousness in these 20 methods? The form, feelings, and perceptions are concepts that we can relate to using our day-to-day observations. Therefore, my question about formations and consciousness. With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, actually the formations. So, I mean, this main part of formations is the intentions and the various different kinds of mental formations. So when there are thinking, now we already discussed. So when there is fair amount of thinking, so that thinking is based on the ignorance, and you are into conceptual proliferation, so that conceptual proliferation can give you the sense of I. So, I am suffering, I am worried, I am regretting, I am crying, I am happy, I am jealous, I am lustful, I am angry. Now, all these are mental formations actually. So, all different kinds of thinking actually may promote some sort of a sense of I. So, personality view is fairly highlighted because of this proliferation. Because more and more you proliferate, more and more the sense of I is very much like strengthened. So either you simply say, okay, I am thinking, I think like this, this is my view, this is my idea. Or immediately you identification telling, I am thinking, or simply you can say, okay, this is my thought, or this is my idea, okay, my design, this is my view. So the Sankhara are also having 4 different possibilities, contribution in 4 different ways. Sankharang attato samanupasati. Sankhara vantan va attana. That means the second part is relating that my thoughts or the thoughts are belong to me. Ideas are belong to me. Views are belong to me. Or any kind of defilement belong to me. Now suppose, say for example, you got angry. Simply you can say, I am angry. So that means immediate identification, the first category. Sankharang attato samanupasati. Or simply you can say, I am an angry character. Easily I get angry. So putting a little bit a different way, you admit anger belongs to you. So likewise, this mental formations is a very good contributor to develop the Sakkaya Ditthi. More you think, more you develop Sakkaya Ditthi. And on the other hand, the consciousness. Now here we can say when you are looking at something, you can simply say, okay, I am the one who saw that flower. I am the one who saw that picture. I was the witness. I am the one who first saw that scene. I am the one who explained that scene to the other person. So I am the first who saw that. So basically that seeing, the activity seeing is something now you felt with the sense of I. Rather than seeing, rather than accepting, rather than understanding, seeing as a mere activity, rather you include an I factor into that activity. That's the problem. Now say for example, you are hearing a song. Simply you can say, okay, I heard a song. So if you are merely telling it to someone with a very soft tone, okay, I heard a song. So I can't say that, say, you have a strong personality view there. But assume that someone is challenging, telling, okay, I am the one who heard that he was kind of blaming with these terms. Assume that he is making a lie. And probably you can immediately object and say, no, I heard like this. He didn't blame you. I also was there. And I heard like this. He was mentioning like this. I heard like this. So you can emphasize your presence. And your also participation, your also hearing of that conversation. So there the sense of I is very strong. So likewise, whatever the seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, tasting, and thinking, even though they are mere processes, we like to include I or an I factor into this activity. So whatever the cognition process happened at the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, so rather than accepting them as mere activities, we like to have some sort of relationship to a person. I am the one seeing, I am the one who have heard it, or I am the one who tasted it, I am the one touched it, I am the one thinking. So typically the notion is when there are thoughts, there is a thinker. There is an I who is thinking. So this is how actually the consciousness aggregate very, very subtle way contributing to the sense of I. Personality view.
Thank you, Bhante. This is question number 6 of 8. This is a Dhammasaman question. Dear Bhante, today's Dhamma talk referred arising and passing away and no continuum of past or to the future. Is this the same as impermanence of the present moment, Bhante? That's the end of the question.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Because, once you understand the impermanence, you can't say, I existed or I am going to exist. What you see is mere phenomena arising and passing away. Arising and passing away is there. And you can't objectify things. You can't label things. You can't put things into words even, because things are in utter transience. Everything happens like a flux. Very much like the impermanence is the key characteristics helping you to sever the whole ignorance, and further then it can lead towards the suffering characteristics or to the non-self characteristic. So the founding stone is actually this impermanence.
Question number 7 of 8. Dear Bhante, listening to today's Dhamma talk, in the definition of a person, so we are told that we cannot consider the person as a body or a mind. So it draws the question then, what is it? So you mentioned that there is no entity, there's a flux which is arising and passing away. So are we to think that we are just a mere blip in this mass of flux that is arising and passing away? With metta, that's the end of the question.
What is that term, Shamila? Blip?
Yes, Bhante. B-L-I-P.
What's the meaning of blip?
Blip is just a, don't know, it's like a very small, tiny, like a flash or light or something like that.
A flash.
Like a small, let me just...
Let me find it out. Give me a second. Blip. B-L-I-P.
Yes, but
Sudden minor shock or meaningless interruption. A radar echo displayed so as to show the position of a reflecting surface. Okay, kind of a blip. Actually, that is why. So Buddha ultimately takes us to the emptiness. Sunyo loko. So this whole world is empty. Empty of a self and what belongs to a self. So there is a continuation of various processes, but ignorantly we trying to acquire them, we trying to impose a self into that, but everything happens without a self. So this world is entirely empty of a self. This world is entirely empty of what belongs to a self. So that is the kind of a sum, or we can say the summary of the whole understanding. So ultimately one would understand, okay, nothing is there. There is no substance. There is nothing substantial. There is no person. There is no individual. No, there is no soul. There is no self. This world is empty. So you understand the emptiness from a very deep sense. And that is why certain suttas Buddha directly answer. So someone come in and ask, Bhante, why this everyone is telling Sunyo loko, Sunyo loko. This world is empty. This world is empty. So they have understood, okay, they have practiced, they went through this vipassana process, and where to find a person, where to find an animal, where to find a being, where to find an object. So everything is in utter flux. Everything is under transience. Then you can't find any essence, any core, any hard wood. So there ultimately you decide, okay, nothing is there. Everything is empty. Everything is useless. Everything is meaningless. Everything is unsubstantial. Everything is empty. So that's how the mind become now very much like not being able to grasp. Now for the mind to grasp something, there should be someone or there should be something. Then only it is quite easy for us to grasp. Now you can check, when there is no one, how are you going to grasp? Either there is no one in front or no one inside here, into your sight. Then how are you going to grasp? Or when there is nothing, there is no object, what are you going to grasp? So the grasping is impossible when there is nothing. So ultimately you decide, okay, nothing is there. Everything is empty.
Bhante, we've just gone over time, but there's one more
Yeah.
question. And
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So question number 8 of 8. So this is a Dhammasaman question. Dear Bhante, in the formula, when this exists, this arises. Why are there two statements? And what exactly is the difference between the two statements? With metta,
This
this
is
is the end of the
something,
question.
this is a very good question and very subtle question. Actually, I also refer the terminology used by Katakulunde Jnananda Thero. I don't want to change it because I am also not an expert in this. But he being an expert, so I like to admit his explanation. And by the way, some teachers translate it as when this exists, that also exists. When the arising of this, that arises. And when this does not exist, that does not exist. And with the passing away of this, that passes away. So maybe actually there is a kind of a reason why Katakulunde Thero is using this. Actually, the Pali term is also this. Imasmin sati idang hoti, imasuppada idang uppajjati. So imasmin and idang. So basically referring to this, not that. Imasmin sati etang, if we use etang, then we can say the that. But here, very much like this. Emphasis is very much taking to the present moment as far as we can see. Not that something far away or something external, completely outside happen, but at this very moment, here itself, things are happening. When the arising of ignorance, okay, the formations are arising here itself, in your mind. Nothing another place, here itself, at this very moment. And with the arising of formations, okay, now the consciousness is going to establish here itself. And the consciousness to establish, okay, the name and form should be here. It should be present here itself. So likewise, I feel its emphasis is given by using the term this and this again and again, 2 times. It's momentary nature and it's very much like electric nature, happening right now, right here itself. So the process, the formula can be applied to our mind at this moment, here itself.
Bhante, so we've come to the end of the questions today and we've gone over time as well. So we'll end the program. To end the program, first I'd like to thank Bhante for his valuable time, even with the busy schedule at the monastery. To all the supporters of this program, both seen and unseen, and to all the participants today for joining to practice and share their questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thero Saranai.
Yeah, Thero Saranai.